Thank you, and please be seated. We are delighted and honored to welcome all of you to this standing room only event here in the White House. I want to acknowledge each and every one of you, especially the members of the families and the close friends and associates of our honorees. And I am particularly pleased that we have Secretary Shalala, Secretary Dalton, Secretary West, Senator Robb, Senator Harkin, Representative Holmes Norton, Representative Matsui, Representative Conyers, Representative Owens, Representative Davis, Representative Moran, Representative Tauscher, Representative Scott, and Mayor Berry, who are also able to join us. We pay tribute today to 15 men and women who have earned not only this highest civilian honor that our country can bestow, but also the gratitude of every single American. It is, of course, appropriate that we hold this ceremony today on what would have been Dr. Martin Luther King's 69th birthday. For it was Dr. King who taught us that everyone can be great because anyone can serve. And it was Dr. King who called upon Americans to fight for freedom and justice by reaching out our hands and opening up our hearts to others. Almost 30 years ago, at his last Sunday sermon at the National Cathedral, Dr. King reminded us that we are all tied together in a single garment of destiny, caught in an inescapable network of mutuality. This simple yet powerful idea has sustained us as individuals and as a nation, and it has guided the exemplary men and women, the heroes and heroines who the President will recognize today. If we look at all those who have been awarded the Medal of Freedom, their lives and contributions make up some of the most important chapters of the American story. The story of a nation struggling to end the plague of discrimination. The story of Americans working to preserve our culture and our environment. The story of our fight to secure peace abroad and freedom at home. Theirs is really the story of human progress, a tale of what can be accomplished by the most powerful person in any democracy, the citizen. I say citizenship is the most important role that any of us are called upon to play in our lives as Americans, because no one asked these distinguished Americans to stand up for those too often left behind. No regulation or law forced them to step up to the plate. They simply chose to act and serve, and in so doing, to further the cause of freedom and human dignity. So today, we honor ordinary Americans, but they have accomplished extraordinary things. Each of them would be the first to tell you, as those whom I know among them have, that they didn't do anything special. But we know better. And we honor them not only for who they are, but also for who they inspire all of us as Americans to become. And it is now my great honor to introduce, on this very special and important day here in the White House and in our country, the President of the United States.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. I want to begin with a warm welcome to all of our guests here, our honorees and their family members, members of the administration, members of Congress, other distinguished officials. It is fitting that today this ceremony occurs on the birthday of Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr., who 21 years ago was granted this award by President Carter posthumously to ensure that his legacy would live on. Until every child has the opportunity to live up to his or her God-given potential, free from want in a world at peace, Dr. King's work and our work is not yet done. He once said that no social advance rolls on the wheels of inevitability. After 5 years in Washington, I know that is true. Humanity makes progress through decades of sweat and toil by dedicated individuals who give freely of themselves and who inspire others to do the same. The kind of heroic men and women we honor today. All of our honorees has helped America to widen the circle of democracy by fighting for human rights, by righting social wrongs, by empowering others to achieve, by preserving our precious environment, by extending peace around the world. Every person here has done so by rising in remarkable ways to America's highest calling. The calling, as the First Lady said, of active citizenship. On behalf of a grateful nation, I would like to bestow the Presidential Medal of Freedom on these courageous citizens. Let me say as I begin that I am grateful to all of them who are here and those who are not. First, Arnie Aronson, who unfortunately is ill and is represented here by his wife, Annette, his son, Bernie, his granddaughter, Felicia. Arnie Arrington, a glowing symbol of the coalition of conscience-linking black and white communities, began his career in civil rights in 1941, when he and A. Philip Randolph secured a landmark executive order banning discrimination on the basis of race. He later co-founded the Leadership Conference on Civil Rights, helping hundreds of disparate groups keep their eyes on the prize and speak with one booming voice. As the legendary leader Clarence Mitchell Jr. said of him, there would not have been a civil rights movement without the Leadership Conference, and there would not have been a Leadership Conference without Arnie Aronson. Commander Huey, please read the citation.
The President of the United States of America awards this Presidential Medal of Freedom to Arnold Aronson. Arnold Aronson has labored quietly and selflessly for more than 50 years in the vineyards of our nation's civil rights movement. As co-founder of the pioneering Leadership Conference on Civil Rights, a driving force behind the passage of the landmark civil rights legislation of the 1950s and 1960s, longtime president of the LCCR Education Fund, and program director for the National Jewish Community Relations Council, he has shown us how to work toward equality through cooperation and has helped to unite all Americans across the lines that have sometimes divided us. We are all better because Arnie Aronson has lived among us.
I never contradict my wife in public, but I couldn't help thinking when she said we were honoring 15 ordinary American citizens today, I thought, yes, people like Brooke Astor and David Rockefeller. But I say that to make this point. In some ways, we honor them more because they certainly had other options. And that is important to remember. At the age of 15, about 8 decades ago, Brooke Astor wrote a wise poem. In that poem, an elderly man implores a young girl, "Take thy spade and take thine axe, make the flowers bloom." With her legendary largesse and unequaled grace, she has made more flowers bloom than anyone, not only at such recognizable landmarks as the New York Public Library and the Metropolitan Museum of Art, but also in forgotten homeless shelters, youth centers, and nursing homes. She is not only New York's unofficial First Lady, she has become America's guardian angel. Commander, read the citation.
The President of the United States of America awards this Presidential Medal of Freedom to Brooke Russell Astor. Legendary in her beloved New York and admired throughout our nation for her wide-ranging and hands-on philanthropy, Brooke Astor has given generously of her wealth, her time, and her compassion for the common good. She has put into action her simple philosophy that, quote, if you have enough money for 3 meals a day and you're not too busy, you ought to do something for others. From her care for the homeless and underprivileged to her devotion to literacy, conservation, and cultural enrichment, she has indelibly touched the lives of millions. With enthusiasm and energy, Brooke Astor has shone as a jewel of hope for us all.
I'm going to get my head kicked.
In 1961, a young Air Force psychiatrist in New Orleans saw a 6-year-old black girl being heckled by an angry crowd. The girl, Ruby Bridges was her name, did not yell back, but instead knelt down to pray. The doctor, Robert Coles, was greatly moved. From that moment on, he dedicated his life to healing racial wounds, aiding children in crisis, and inspiring Americans to answer the call of citizen service. As a Harvard professor and a prolific documentarian of the American spirit, he has been the beacon of social consciences for more than 2 generations of Americans, from Robert Kennedy to the freshmen in college today. There is hardly a person I know who has ever read his books who has not been profoundly changed. Hillary and I are personally grateful to him just for those books. But his life has elevated the morality and the spirituality of the United States. Commander, read the citation.
The President of the United States of America awards this Presidential Medal of Freedom to Robert Coles. A gifted psychiatrist, teacher, and writer, Robert Coles has spent a lifetime unlocking the mysteries of childhood experience. With art and literature as his guide, he has listened to the voices of children worldwide and revealed for us their unique perceptions of race, class, history, and spirituality. In the process, he has documented the perils of poverty and racism and has challenged us to live lives of moral purpose through citizen service. With an open mind and a generous heart, Robert Coles has broadened our horizons and led us to a new understanding of our children and ourselves.
Justin Dart literally opened the doors of opportunities to millions of our citizens by securing passage of one of the nation's landmark civil rights laws, the Americans with Disabilities Act. Throughout his career, he has worn many hats, and he's wearing one of them today. At the University of Houston, he led bold efforts to promote integration. He went on to become, in his own words, a full-time soldier in the trenches of justice, touring every state in the nation to elevate disability rights to the mainstream of political discourse. He once said, "Life is not a game that requires losers." He has given millions a chance to win. He has also been my guide in understanding the needs of disabled Americans. And every time I see him, he reminds me of the power of heart and will. I don't know that I've ever known a braver person. Commander, read the citation.
The President of the United States of America awards this Presidential Medal of Freedom to Justin Dart, Jr. The purpose of human society, Justin Dart has said, is to empower every individual to live life to his or her God-given potential. He has made that purpose his own. Since contracting polio as a young man, he has worked with the independence, inclusion, and empowerment of people with disabilities. A leading architect of the Americans with Disabilities Act and a driving force behind its passage, he has had a profound impact on the public policy of this nation. Justin Dart has earned our thanks for helping us recognize the possibility within each individual and for tenaciously advocating equal access to the American dream for all our people.
In the spring of 1942, a man fresh out of theology school sat down at the counter of Chicago's Jack Sprat coffee shop and ordered a donut. Because he was black, he was refused. Because his name was James Farmer, he did not give in. He and the other founders of the Congress of Racial Equality organized the nation's first sit-in and launched an era of nonviolent protests for civil rights. He went on to help bring down Jim Crow by leading freedom rides, voter drives, and marches, enduring repeated beatings and jailings along the way. He has never sought the limelight, and until today, I frankly think he's never gotten the credit he deserves for the contribution he has made to the freedom of African Americans and other minorities and their equal opportunities in America. But today, he can't avoid the limelight, and his long overdue recognition has come to pass. Read the citation, Commander.
The President of the United States of America awards this Presidential Medal of Freedom to James Farmer. Visionary civil rights hero, James Farmer has inspired millions of Americans with his passionate convictions, committed activism, and unwavering dignity. As founder more than 50 years ago of the Congress of Racial Equality, he embraced the principles of direct action and nonviolence, leading the first sit-ins to protest racial segregation. His organization of and participation in the Freedom Rides of the 1960s focused national attention on inequities in public accommodations and often put his life at risk. The changes he wrought are with us to this day. Our nation proudly salutes James Farmer for his extraordinary work to combat discrimination and bring racial harmony and healing to our land.
nonprofit management. She has shared her remarkable recipe for inclusion and excellence with countless organizations whose bottom line is measured not in dollars, but in changed lives. Since Mrs. Hesselbein forbids the use of hierarchical words like up and down when she's around, I will call this pioneer for women, volunteerism, diversity, and opportunity not up, but forward to be recognized. Commander, read the citation.
The President of the United States of America awards this Presidential Medal of Freedom to Frances Hesselbein. Frances Hesselbein has devoted herself to changing lives for the better. Rising from a volunteer troop leader to Chief Executive Officer of the Girl Scouts of America, she reinvigorated the organization with her commitment to inclusiveness and to upholding the Girl Scout mission of empowering each Scout to reach her highest potential. Under her guidance, the number of minority Girl Scouts tripled and overall membership soared. She has worked to imbue other nonprofit groups with the hallmarks of true leadership: openness to innovation, willingness to share responsibility, and respect for diversity. With skill and sensitivity, Frances Hesselbein has shown us how to summon the best from ourselves and our fellow citizens.
In 1942, an ordinary American took an extraordinary stand. Fred Korematsu boldly opposed the forced internment of Japanese Americans during World War II. After being convicted for failing to report for relocation, Mr. Korematsu took his case all the way to the Supreme Court. The High Court ruled against him. But 39 years later, he had his conviction overturned in federal court, empowering tens of thousands of Japanese Americans and giving him what he said he wanted most of all: the chance to feel like an American once again. In the long history of our country's constant search for justice, some names of ordinary citizens stand for millions of souls. Plessy, Brown, Parks. To that distinguished list, today we add the name of Fred Korematsu. Commander, please read the citation.
The President of the United States of America awards this Presidential Medal of Freedom to Fred T. Korematsu. An American who wanted only to be treated like every other American, Fred Korematsu challenged our nation's conscience, reminding us that we must uphold the rights of our own citizens, even as we fight tyranny in other lands. Defying the 1942 order for the internment of Japanese Americans, he stood strong against anti-Asian prejudice in the United States during World War II. Convicted of violating the order, he waited more than 40 years for justice when a federal court overturned the judgment that the Supreme Court first upheld against him. A man of quiet bravery, Fred Korematsu deserves our respect and thanks for his patient pursuit to preserve the civil liberties we hold dear.
As our mutual friend Mac McClarty once said, receiving advice from Saul Lenowitz on international diplomacy is like getting trumpet lessons from the angel Gabriel. Saul Lenowitz has answered his call, his nation's call, many, many times. Over his distinguished career, he has always been willing to extend the hand of peace, freedom, and prosperity to our neighbors all over the world. With his admired style of quiet and conciliatory diplomacy, he has helped President Carter negotiate the Panama Canal treaties. He made great strides in the peace process in the Middle East. He worked to provide aid to starving Cambodians. He has been our administration's guiding spirit for expanding cooperation throughout our hemisphere. If every world leader had half the vision Saul Lenowitz does, we'd have about 1/10 as many problems as we've got in this whole world today. He's also led here at home, working to address problems of racism and poverty, always giving generously of his time, no matter how busy he is. Saul Lenowitz is an American patriot of the highest order. Commander, read the citation.
The President of the United States of America awards this Presidential Medal of Freedom to Saul M. Lenowitz. Even as he has succeeded in law and business, Saul Lenowitz has never forgotten the needs of others. Involved early in local community service, he later broadened his activities to promote the goals of international understanding and job creation in developing countries. As co-founder of the International Executive Service Corps, he inspired retired American executives to share their expertise with emerging nations to help foster economic growth. In a series of high-level diplomatic assignments, he made lasting contributions to the pursuit of world peace. With a keen mind, a warm heart, and a generous spirit, Saul Lenowitz has enriched the lives of millions around the world.
When Wilma Mankiller was 10, she and her family were relocated from Cherokee lands in Oklahoma to San Francisco. But it was in San Francisco during the Civil Rights era that she found her voice and a belief in the power to make change. Later, Wilma Mankiller returned to Oklahoma and became chief of the Cherokee Nation. During her 2 terms in office, and I might add she won re-election by 82%. She was not only the guardian of the centuries-old Cherokee heritage, but a revered leader who built a brighter and healthier future for her nation. When she stepped down as chief, the Cherokee Nation wept. We know today's honor will bring tears of joy to many in both our nations. Commander, read the citation.
The President of the United States of America awards this Presidential Medal of Freedom to Wilma P. Mankiller. Wilma Mankiller prevailed over childhood poverty, relocation, and other personal adversity to become a strong and creative leader of the Cherokee Nation. Compelled by problems endured by her tribe, she returned home to Oklahoma to devote her skills and energy to make life better for her people. The success of her innovative community projects underscored the effectiveness of her message of self-esteem and self-reliance, and ultimately led to her election as the first female chief of a Native American tribe. Our nation pays tribute to Wilma Mankiller, who has made it her mission to bring opportunity, a higher standard of living, improved health care, and quality education to Native Americans.
For Marty Murray, wilderness is personal. She and her husband Olaus spent their honeymoon, listen to this, on a 550-mile dog sled expedition through the Brooks Mountain Range of Alaska. Fitting for a couple whose love for each other was matched only by their love of nature. They certainly must have known each other better after the trip was over. After her husband died, Mrs. Murray built on their 5 decades of work together. She became the prime mover in the creation of one of America's great national treasures, the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge, and blazed trails for generations of conservationists. Today, amidst the fir and spruce of the high Tetons, she shares her wisdom with everyone who passes by, from ordinary hikers to the President and the First Lady, inspiring us all to conserve our pristine lands and preserve her glorious legacy. Commander, read the citation.
The President of the United States of America awards this Presidential Medal of Freedom to Margaret E. Murray. We owe much to the life's work of Marty Murray, a pioneer of the environmental movement who, with her husband Olaus, helped set the course of American conservation more than 70 years ago. Her passionate support for and compelling testimony on behalf of the Alaska Lands Act helped to ensure the legislation's passage and the protection of some of our most pristine lands. A member of the Governing Council of the Wilderness Society, she also founded the Teton Science School to teach students of all ages the value of ecology. For her steadfast and inspiring efforts to safeguard America's wilderness for future generations, we honor Marty Murray.
In 1970, Mario Obledo received a complaint that a public swimming pool in Texas was barring Mexican Americans at the gate. He decided to travel 200 miles to take a swim. He was turned away, and he filed suit. When Mr. Obledo won, even the joy in the courthouse could not match that of Mexican-American children whose civil rights had been defended, as finally they had a chance to jump into that public pool. As co-founder of the Mexican-American Legal Defense and Education Fund and the National Hispanic Bar Association, as chairman of the Rainbow Coalition, Mario Obledo has expanded opportunity for Americans of every race and ethnic background. Through the force of law and the power of the vote, he has enhanced the character and condition of America. Commander, read the citation.
The President of the United States of America awards this Presidential Medal of Freedom to Mario G. Obledo. A veteran of the Korean conflict, Mario Obledo returned home to face another kind of struggle, the struggle of Hispanic Americans to achieve their rightful place as full members of our society. As National President of the League of United Latin American Citizens, a guiding force in the Southwest Voter Registration and Education Project, co-founder of the National Hispanic Bar Association, and as chairman of the Rainbow Coalition, he has worked to benefit those who historically have been denied access to political, economic, and educational opportunities. Uniting the voices of diverse ethnic, racial, and religious groups, Mario Obledo has created a powerful chorus for justice and equality.
After he was decorated on the beaches of Normandy and had begun to serve as a law clerk for Justice Felix Frankfurter, Elliot Richardson had a strange request for his distinguished boss. The brilliant young Renaissance man asked if he could have an uninterrupted hour every morning to read poetry. Alas, he was refused. That effort failed, but little else has failed in Elliot Richardson's versatile, indefatigable career. He gave courageous and deeply moral service to our nation as Secretary of Health, Education, and Welfare, Secretary of Defense, Ambassador to the United Kingdom, Secretary of Commerce, where he actually painted his own official portrait, and of course, as Attorney General, where on one difficult Saturday night, he saved the nation from a constitutional crisis with his courage and moral clarity. No public servant is more beloved by those who have served him. No public servant has shown greater respect for the Constitution he has served. And it is my great honor to award him the Medal of Freedom today. Commander, please read the citation.
The President of the United States of America awards this Presidential Medal of Freedom to Elliott L Richardson. A man of principle and integrity, Elliot Richardson epitomizes distinguished public service. In a public career spanning more than 5 decades, he has served in more United States cabinet positions as Secretary of Health, Education, and Welfare, Secretary of Defense, Attorney General, and Secretary of Commerce than any other person in our nation's history. At HEW, he was a strong advocate for welfare reform and for racial integration in America's schools. As Attorney General, at a time of crisis in our national life, he acted with extraordinary courage and conviction, keeping faith with the American people. A true patriot, Elliot Richardson has earned our lasting gratitude for maintaining the highest standards of service to our nation.
Rockefeller is a name that resonates throughout American history. It means not only private success and wealth, but also an abiding sense of public responsibility. David Rockefeller is the standard bearer of this family and this tradition, from making unprecedented commitments to biomedical research, to sending tens of thousands of retired executives, all volunteers, to developing nations in need of advice and skills. In every region of the world, heads of state seek his counsel. But whether he is addressing the King of Spain or a fellow beetle collector he meets by chance, he treats everyone with exactly the same impeccable courtesy and respect, as I learned when I met him a good while before anyone but my mother thought I could become president. David Rockefeller is a gentleman, a statesman, a scholar, and most important, a genuine humanitarian of the likes our nation has rarely seen. Commander, read the citation.
The President of the United States of America awards this Presidential Medal of Freedom to David Rockefeller. Through his extensive humanitarian efforts to promote world peace, David Rockefeller has worked to improve lives both at home and abroad. Building on his family's tradition of charitable giving, he has generously supported a wide range of educational, cultural, health, and urban renewal programs. As co-founder of the International Executive Service Corps, he has recognized the duty and responsibility of the private sector to a world in need. His creation of and support for the Trilateral Commission has provided a unique forum for communication and problem solving by world leaders. Philanthropist, businessman, community servant, and exemplary global citizen, David Rockefeller has earned our enduring respect and heartfelt thanks.
You know, I hate to break the gravity of the moment, but I have now something else to thank you for, David. I've been wondering how we could get this ceremony out into the popular consciousness, and with the mention in the citation of the Trilateral Commission, I know we're going to be on talk radio all over America today. So thank you very much. Albert Shanker illuminated our nation's path toward educating our children with devastating honesty, sharp wit, and profound wisdom. He was one of the most important teachers of the 20th century. In 1983, when the Nation at Risk report challenged us to do far more to raise educational standards for all our children, Al Shanker was one of the very first to answer the call. That began for me, a young governor who cared a lot about education, one of the most remarkable working relationships of my entire life. For Al Shanker was, for me and so many others, a model, a mentor, a friend, a leader of immense stature who always spoke his mind, no matter how unpopular the thought. We miss him dearly, but we are comforted to know that many others carry on his mission, and that his wife, Edie, is here with us today to accept this award, which he so richly deserves, in his honor. Commander, read the citation.
The President of the United States of America awards this Presidential Medal of Freedom to Albert Shanker. Albert Shanker was an impassioned and forthright champion of public education in America. Rising from substitute math teacher to the presidency of the American Federation of Teachers, he fought and won important battles for teachers' rights and waged a prolonged crusade for rigorous educational standards for students and certification for teachers. The son of Russian immigrants, he realized that democracy works best when we give all of our children a chance to live up to their potential, and he devoted a lifetime of service to making our public education system fulfill its promise. Al Shanker's foresight and determination provided the foundation upon which we can build toward a brighter future for our nation's children.
These days, Elmo Bud Zumwalt introduces himself as a former sailor. Sort of like calling Henry Ford a former car salesman. In 1970, Bud Zumwalt became the youngest man in our country's history to rise to the rank of Commander of Naval Operations, the Navy's top post. There, he earned billing as the Navy's most popular leader since World War II for his bold efforts to modernize Navy life. He is a genuine patriot, with an astonishing life story that includes a remarkable wife whom he met a year or two ago in Russia, and China, I'm sorry. But more than most Americans who have served our country with distinction, Admiral Zumwalt paid a deeply personal price for his leadership of the Navy during the Vietnam War. For his son, a junior officer in the war, died of a cancer linked to his exposure to Agent Orange in Vietnam. The remarkable thing was Admiral Zumwalt's response. He dedicated himself to fighting for those with war-related ailments. He established the first national marrow donor program to help cancer patients in need. He never stopped fighting for the interests, the rights, and the dignity of those soldiers and sailors and airmen and Marines and their families. Hillary and I have been deeply blessed to know Bud Zumwalt and his wife Musa and their family very well. Yes, he is a former sailor. He is also one of the greatest models of integrity and leadership and genuine humanity our nation has ever produced. Commander, please read the citation.
The President of the United States of America.
Do you think I was going to change my mind? Thank you.
States of America awards this Presidential Medal of Freedom to Admiral Elmo R. Zumwalt, Jr., United States Navy, retired. In both wartime and peacetime, Elmo Zumwalt has exemplified the ideal of service to our nation. A distinguished veteran of World War II and Korea, he served as commander of U.S. naval forces in Vietnam and rose to become the Navy's youngest chief of naval operations in 1970. As CNO, he worked vigorously to improve our sailors' quality of life and devoted himself to eliminating discrimination from the Navy. In a life touched by tragedy, he became a great champion of veterans afflicted by ailments related to service in Vietnam. For his dedication, valor, and compassion, we salute Bud Zumwalt.
Before we move to the state dining room for the reception in honor of our awardees, I'd like to close with a brief note about the future. Hillary and I and the Vice President, indeed our entire administration, are going to be working hard in the coming months to help the American people imagine what the 21st century can bring. As of today, that new century is just a little more than 700 days away, which, as you reflect on the remarkable lives we have celebrated today, is not a lot of time. But I went back and checked. It's about the same amount of time that from 1961 to 1963, an active citizen named King helped James Meredith go to college, stood up to Bull Connor, wrote a letter from a jail in Birmingham, helped to organize the March on Washington, and gave a little speech whose main line was, "I have a dream." Not a bad 700 days' work. We must resolve to use our time just as wisely. As we have learned today from the remarkable lives of the people we celebrate, some of whom span nearly this entire century. Even a long, long life doesn't take long to live and passes in the flash of an eye. They have shown us that if we live it well, we can leave this earth better for our children. Thank you, and God bless you.